You are with the University of Karate. Again, we've come together to understand and examine the principles that come together to make up the martial arts. Various disciplines, various different sciences, techniques, methods, all come together in what we know is the martial arts. Even deploying the techniques of the martial arts. We're joined again with Sensei Mike Biddle, who spent over 40 years in the martial arts, especially the style called Uechi-ryu. But he has studied a number of different martial arts and has seen these same principles seen throughout these various martial arts. Our topic today is back to basics and dealing with rotation. Rotation, not rotation as in moving from one place to another. We're talking about the rotation of the body. Rotation of the body, especially as it pertains today, we're dealing with the punch or reverse punch. What are the basics? Many times we find that in martial arts, there are individuals who are so desirous of mastery in their own mind that they go from technique to technique to technique, punch to punch to punch. They want to get all the punches, all the kicks, but they don't master the basics of doing any one punch. What are some of these basics? It comes down to the understanding of rotation, the proper rotation of the body and the using the correct muscles, which again, we're going to have Sensei Biddle give us understanding of as we look at a video dealing with this same topic. Let's let Sensei Biddle jump in here and give us an understanding.
Yeah, I was watching the very last video we just did, and there's a karate practitioner doing reverse punches and kicks and things. In the very beginning, the reverse punch is what I watch. And again, it's hard to explain this, but I don't look at technique so much. In other words, the hand, the fingers, and I look at more of what's creating the technique, the body motion. Because let's be realistic about it. There's not that many ways to move. I gotta re-say that. There's lots of ways to move, but there's not very many ways to move correctly. So I think we get caught up in this backwards, and I understand why. It's human nature, but we get caught up in these techniques and reverse punches and chops and ridge hands and all these different things. But what we lose sight of, how is that motion being created? How is the biomechanical part of that getting done? And in the fundamentals of any style, you learn those principles. So like this clip for the reverse punch, if you're watching what he's doing, you've got to see this. So I'm going to tell you what to look for. Look at the opposite shoulder from the arm that he's punching with. So if he's punching with his left arm, left hand, watch his right shoulder. And he even demonstrates this into the clip. So as the left arm extends, the right arm is pulling back. It's what we used to call double reverse punches. We used to do a lot of these. Japanese stylists do more probably than we did in Uechi-ryu, but the mechanics of them are the same. So as one hand is extending, the other hand's pulling back. Well, and everybody says, well, yeah, we would never use that in self-defense. Of course you wouldn't, because it's not what you do. But that's not the point. The point is in a self-defense application. The point is a fundamental application. How to move the body. So when you're doing double punches, I want you to practice this. As you're let's say we're going to punch with the right arm. The left arm is extended. And as the right arm comes out, I want you to focus on the opposite shoulder. So the right arm, focus on your left shoulder. You're going to use your latissimus dorsi muscle, that big muscle in your back, to pull that shoulder back behind you. So it rotates sort of like back and towards behind your head. That big muscle is one of the strongest muscles in the body, and that's what creates torso rotation. Now there's other smaller muscle groups involved, the obliques, things like that, etc., but that's fine. Those come along for the ride. The latissimus dorsi, that big, large muscle, sits at a 45-degree angle, attaches to the arm and lower part of the spine. I'm talking fast in this because I don't want to waste a lot of time on it. So that muscle contracts and pulls that shoulder back, and the right arm will extend. Left shoulder back, right arm out. Now you notice that the right shoulder is extended and the left arm is back. Now change that pattern, pull the right shoulder back, lead with that right shoulder, And then it's going to start the rotation, and as that rotation completes, the arm can naturally extend. You don't need a lot of arm push in this motion. Try doing this. In fact, if you want to learn this properly, keep your arms very relaxed, very soft. Practice rotating those shoulders back and forth, trying to create that explosion of the arm out. It's like twisting a top and something is flinging off the end of it. It's called centripetal force. There's a circular force, and it's throwing off a force outward. That rotation of the shoulder is extending that arm. If you look at Bruce Lee, what was the biggest development part of his body in regards to muscles? It was his lats. He does that famous pose in Enter the Dragon. His lats were enormous. His chest wasn't very big. He didn't have big pectorals. We always equate pushing with bench press, with the chest muscles. No, Bruce Lee didn't need those. He didn't develop those. Now, they were tight because he was fit, but he did develop the lats. They were exceedingly developed. If you look at swimmers, let's say you look at like Olympic swimmer, and they're doing freestyle, and they're moving their arms over their head, and they're actually rotating their torso in the water. If you watch this, as the arm pulls, if the right arm is reached over the head and is entering the water, as it pulls down, they're using that right lat. As it pulls, it's going to rotate the body, so the right shoulder is going to rise and the left shoulder is going to sink. Then the other arm comes out, and then you just see this turning in the water. Once you see this, you won't unsee it. Just look at the turning in the water. This is a freestyle. Just go watch it. I spend a lot of time watching a lot of different sports because I like to see how things move. Because like I said, there's lots of ways we can move. There's only a few ways we can move correctly. So in the martial arts and in your karate, you have these basic fundamentals, these basic stances, these basic movement patterns that we learn, that we just leave and we go on to the advanced techniques, and we forget about what the original thing was teaching us. You see the same pattern in the kata. We've talked about that. We have San Chin, and then you have all the other kata, and everybody thinks San Chin is the beginner kata, and I'm telling you the San Chin is the end kata. It is the most advanced kata. Forget all the other stuff. The others are just expressions. But you come back to that. So don't lose sight of that. So when you're doing techniques, if you're doing again, here's another great rotational movement. Do an overhead karate chop, where you start with your arm up at a 90-degree angle of your shoulder. Now, what I want you to do, though, take your right arm, set it up 90 degrees. Now rotate your right shoulder backward. So you're now rotated. Your shoulders will rotate about 45 degrees. We can talk about the hips. But the shoulders are 45 degrees. Now, in order to initiate that chop, take your left elbow and pull it behind you to make those shoulders unwind, and then just release the hand. So it's rotation, and then the hand just releases. Now, you can add arm muscle movement in it, but don't learn it that way. And you probably no one ever tells you this. Learn the body movement correctly first, and leave the arm loose and learn to strike down hard. I can strike so hard with that rotational movement and just whipping my arm through that the blood rushes to the end of my fingers and my hand, and it hurts. I cannot do a lot of them. It hurts because the blood is exploding to the end of the hand. What kind of force are we creating there that can do that? But you can't do that with an arm chop. You just can't create that. There's not enough power in there. But if you use the rotation of the shoulders, and then we can later talk about the hips, if you use the hips and the shoulders and you create that proper rotation and then release the arm, and then there's a way of creating tension in the arm with a crane movement, and that just snaps and all that force is generated. That's that centripetal force. So I'm going to expand that just for a moment, and then I think this John has a follow-up. We can sort of see where that ends. But so in all my techniques, I have developed the centripetal force movement patterns, the hips, the shoulders. So I create circular motions with my shoulders and my hips and my arms. My arms go wherever I want the direction to apply. My shoulders and hips are moving. So I can create power in any angle and any depth with just the body rotation. And real quick segue, if you watch Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch, don't watch the hand, watch the hips. Then watch the shoulders. He has a micro movements there. He's creating very fast, explosive micro movement with his hips and his shoulders. So those movements don't have to be big movements either. They can be smaller. So you can vary them. They're play toys. You can do whatever you want with them. But you have to learn the sequencing. Hips, shoulders, but you can do them independently. Depends on the angle you want, depends on the situation you want. It's all circular, it's all rotational, which creates centripetal force, it's not centrifugal force. Centrifugal force is like you're stuck in a merry-go-round and you're on the end of it. Centripetal force is there's turning in the middle and the force is being flung outward. And that force can be directed by where you want it to go. It's just an expression. So to me, I don't care about techniques. Techniques can be whatever I want. You know, we could talk about one knuckles and finger strikes and reverse punches and all these different things. What's important is what is creating the technique. Because once I create it properly, I can put any technique on it I want. I can do a 1-finger strike, I can do a 4-finger strike, I can do whatever, it doesn't matter. But you've got to get the rotational forces first. And biomechanically, you're creating that force with the strongest muscles of your body, your lats and your lower body and your hips and your glutes and your hamstrings. Incredibly powerful muscles.
Yeah, this is very interesting because a lot of times, again, people are almost programmed mentally to want to have a multiplicity of techniques, but not understand the very principles of how to deploy them, how to properly do them. I want to just drop a pin here at the end with this question. I guess you may have touched on it to a certain degree. The element of learning to do the technique correctly, you said, is very, very important. The most important thing, to be able to actually do it correctly with the right rotation and using the right muscles, pulling and turning the body. Could you reemphasize or talk a little bit about the idea of being relaxed? Because I've heard that you should be very relaxed in this proper form of technique. You're relaxed until the very last minute of impact where you turn or snap that movement. Is that correct? The calmness at the end? Yeah,
and that gets into a concept. This is a fun one. And we could do
part 2
hours on this one alone, but I'll just introduce it. There's an Oriental word. You hear in martial arts like Tai Chi to relax. And we relax. But that's culturally incorrect. It's not what they're saying. When they say, the word they use translates to us as relax. And when we say relax, like limp. The actual word is called song. S-O-N-G with a little thing over the top of it. I don't know what it's called for Chinese. It emphasizes it. I don't know what it means. But what song is, it's not relaxing in the sense that we think of. It's letting go. It means let go. So when you're throwing a punch, if you say to relax somebody, you say, well, I can't punch with a limp arm. Well, of course not, because that's not the interpretation. That's not the translation. It's culturally incorrect. When you say use song, it means that you're going to explode the arm out with no what word I want to use? Holding back, because there's always muscles that resist you from going out. You learn to release those completely and use all the movement of the forward part of the muscle, but not in a
Limp.
no. What I'm trying to say is it's not limp, but it's also not in a forced push. It's a sung push. So that means you're extending the arm with intent. And see, there's a lot we have to go into to get into this further, which we will over time. But it's intent in moving the arm out with engaging your internal energy, which, again, we have to talk about. And that's not as mystical as you think. And that explodes outward. And then at the very end, you have the dynamic tension engage. So it's timed. It's relaxed, sung, extension outward, so all your energy is moving outward with no resistance. Picture a water hose and you turn the water on. That hose gets strong and the water flows fast. There's no kinks, which means kinks are muscular tension. Resistant, blocks of tension. You tighten your wrists, you tighten your forearms, your biceps. That stops sung, water from flowing. So as that arm extends, all that energy flows through the arm, and then at the impact point, the muscles just will tighten. And that's going to happen because your CNS is going to engage that automatically because it knows it's got impact coming. It's going to do that. It's not something you have to actually physically train. There are ways to develop it, and there are ways to increase the forces. All these things can be dealt with. But just a general concept is it's speed without overly forcing it and not resisting it. It's the concept of song, and in our culture, in America and English, we have no understanding of that whatsoever. And when you translate it, your Tai Chi master, your karate master says, relax, relax. and you do, and you become a limp noodle. It doesn't make sense.
And that's a little bit of where that Aiki and Aikido comes in, that concept of relaxing and not tensing and letting these motions and techniques just flow.
Yes.
That's why people have such a problem with Aikido, and people always are bashing Aikido because the principles are not being understood in this art. Exactly.
And it's in all of them. It's just we don't understand how to express this concept. Any time you're trying to create, so if you're trying to create force, it's power is speed times mass. So if you have a lot of mass and you move slow, you create power, but it doesn't create much impact. So there's variations of that. So if you create a lot of speed, you don't need a lot of mass, and you can create a greater impact. So that's why someone that's overly muscular and they punch, they don't. There's force on there. Don't get me wrong. If they hit you, you're going to move, but they're not creating that power impact. They're creating more of a push. Let me give you a great example of this, and I'm going to stop there. In Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon, when he sidekicks somebody, he gets really close and he extends his leg, and this is for the movie. He throws them
into boxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. He steps very close and he extends his leg and he throws them. That is not a kick. That's a shove. But that was for the movie. The impact, if you want maximum force and impact, that kick should be almost 99% extended when it makes impact. That's when you get power. It's not a push, it's a hit. And that's a defining thing. In order to create hit, you have to create that smooth, flowing outward expression of movement. The song.
You are with the University of Karate. I think we need to stop it there. We may do a part 2, just talking about just deploying power. But if you have questions, please go into the comments, make questions, make comments, give your testimony of your experience with this. Let's continue the conversation in the comment section below. You're with the University of Karate. We thank you for joining us, sharing this video, and we'll see you next time.